All right, good morning, everyone. This is Monica. Hopefully you all can hear me. And if not, please just shout out into the chat or raise your hand. So this morning we're going to talk about putting your passion on paper, how to translate your service experience to resumes and cover letters. Oh, okay. Sorry, the advance was a little bit slow. I think my computer thinks it's Monday. So sorry about that. So why does your resume matter? It is your brand on paper. It is your opportunity to talk about your qualifications for future work based on your past experience. It is your chance to tell your story with data, and we'll talk about what that means. And it is an opportunity to differentiate you from the competition through your specific achievements and accomplishments. Okay, a cover letter matters as well, and yes, you should always write a cover letter, even if the application doesn't ask for one. The cover letter is your pitch to the organization. It is your opportunity to make a direct connection between you and the role that you're applying for. It demonstrates your attention to detail and your willingness to do more than is required. And a cover letter is especially important if you are making an industry change, which some of you might be as you head from service, volunteer work to paid employment in another industry. Okay, so today we're going to talk about 2018 trends on resumes and cover letters. I'm going to show you how to update or start your resume in 5 easy steps. And then at the end, we'll talk about the 3 parts of a strong cover letter. So hi, that's me. My name is Monica Marcellus Fochtman. That's a lot and hard to say, so Monica is totally okay. I'm a career coach, resume writer, and leadership consultant, and my company is Sheldrake Consulting. And I help people survive and thrive during times of transition. A little bit about me, very briefly. I was born and raised in New Jersey, so I'm an East Coaster. And so living in the Midwest has been quite the transition. I earned my bachelor's and my master's degree at Boston College in Chestnut Hill, Massachusetts. And it was really there that I learned about service and having a faith that does justice. And in between actually earning my master's degree and my first professional job in higher education, I actually was an AmeriCorps Vista volunteer as well. I was a 5th grade teacher at St. John Vianney School in Goodyear, Arizona. Goodyear is a suburb of Phoenix, and at the time was one of the most rapidly growing suburbs in the United States. Their population tripled in 10 years. I spent my career as a college administrator and have worked at various institutions throughout the Midwest. And I'm currently adjunct faculty at Grand Valley State University in addition to running my company. So some general writing strategies to help you get started. I always advise clients to start with their resume and to honestly just do a brain dump of everything that you do in your current role and then edit later. So it's always easier to edit than it is to actually write. So do a free write first and then edit the document. Your resume is more formal, is data and details, numbers, metrics, budgets, results. Your cover letter is also formal, but a little bit more personal, and is an opportunity for you to let your enthusiasm and personality shine through. As you are thinking about possibly transitioning from your service experience to industry, you want to be really careful about defining your terms and not assuming that the audience knows everything that you know. I know from my own experience in service and also especially in higher education, we use a lot of acronyms, a lot of insider speak, and we just assume that the person listening or reading knows what we mean. And so I'm advising you to not do that and to explain what you mean. Okay. The 2018 version of a resume is really quite different from a resume that I would have done for myself 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago. It really needs to be optimized for digital viewing because the chances of you actually handing over a physical paper resume are pretty small. You're going to be applying online through LinkedIn, other kinds of employment services, Glassdoor, Indeed. People aren't really using Monster so much anymore, but it's still out there. So it really needs to be optimized for digital. If it gets to a set of human eyes, that person, usually a recruiter, will spend 6 seconds doing a visual scan of your document. Okay, so it needs to read unique to you. It needs to be specific, very specific, not general. The font, layout, and color should also be specific to you and to the industry that you're applying to. And if you are going to use color, which I suggest that you do very, very sparingly, and if you do use color that it's not red, which is very hard to read and also makes people feel like they're being graded from a teacher. Okay, so the top 1/3 of the first page of your resume is prime real estate. You want to take advantage of that top third of the first page. I strongly suggest that you make a header that includes your name, email, your LinkedIn URL, and a phone number. And then after the header, you have a profile or summary statement, and then a skills or expertise section. Okay, this is an example of one of my old resumes. So this is my header and my summary statement. So you'll see it's my full name, big and bold, centered across the top. It is my customized LinkedIn URL, my email address, and the phone number. Okay, and your email address should really just be first name, last name at Gmail. You don't want any kind of funky pet nicknames or numbers. Want it to be just straight professional as much as possible. And you'll also notice that I did not include my local street address. At this point, the world is virtual and global, and there's really no need to list where you live, especially if you are willing to relocate geographically. And really, there are multiple ways for people to find you, and they will find you. So all you need is LinkedIn and an email address. Okay, so the first tip to update or get started on your resume is to customize your LinkedIn URL. And if you're not on LinkedIn, you need to be. If a recruiter, if you apply for a job online, the recruiter will then go to LinkedIn to find you, and then vice versa. You can apply for jobs through LinkedIn, and then they'll be looking for your document in their online application system. Okay, so when you join LinkedIn, it defaults to a version of your name and then a whole slew of numbers and letters after that. You can go into LinkedIn and customize the URL so that it is just your name. And I will make sure that Maggie has a copy of all of these slides so that you can view this again afterwards. But this screenshot here is instructions on how to customize the URL. Okay, resume tip number 2 is to delete your objective statement. Objective statements are pretty old school and really, honestly, a waste of that prime real estate on the top third of the page. Your objective is to get a job, and the person reading that document knows that, and so you are better off using that space for something that is more productive and more helpful to you. Okay, so that's tip number 3, which is to write a profile or summary statement instead of an objective statement. Okay, this is my attempt at creating a summary statement for one of you, perhaps, as a volunteer. Okay, your summary is your pitch. It is your brand. It's your elevator speech. It is your chance to demonstrate to the person reading the document that you are the right person for them. Okay, and so it's a way to describe yourself and to match what you currently do with what they are looking for. Okay, so in this particular summary or pitch, I tried to demonstrate what you might be doing currently. So you are a community volunteer dedicated to eradicating poverty, and then talk about how you are actually doing that through education and sustainable employment. You have experience in nonprofit agencies focused on increasing college access for low-income students in rural areas. Okay, and what that particular sentence accomplishes is it talks about what you are currently doing, what you're focused on, which is college access, and then for whom, who is the audience? Low-income students in a rural area. Okay, and then the last sentence is kind of, like bringing it home, talking about what you are known for and the difference that you bring. So you're known for your ability to advocate for change by building relationships with key stakeholders. Okay, resume tip number 4 is to add a leadership or skills section. And this is the part where you're really going to start translating your service experience to paper. A lot of us who, do nonprofit work, do service work, talk about our desire to help people, to change the world, to make a difference. And those are all good and important things, of course, but doesn't really tell the person reading your document a whole lot about what that actually means and how you actually do it. So the leadership or skills section is your opportunity to drill down into specifics and demonstrate how you do your service. Okay, so the column on the left is a broad list of leadership skills that you might have. I would probably actually guarantee that you do have these skills as a result of your VISTA experience. Okay, but you've done coalition building, you work in community partnerships, you are an advocate, you work on cross-functional teams, you solve problems creatively, you perhaps work with outside vendors and contractors. Okay, so those are the broad leadership pieces. And then the specific skills that you might have are you've maybe written newsletters for your agency, press releases. You've likely done a lot of work in Microsoft Office, either with Access or Excel or Word, PowerPoint, maybe done some work on Google Classroom, social media, grant writing, and if any of you are bilingual or even conversational in another language, that absolutely needs to go on your resume. Okay, and then this is an example of what a leadership profile would actually look like on the document. You can absolutely use columns like in the previous slide. Just want to caution you though about using tables and text boxes on your document. They're hard to read for the online applicant tracking systems, and a lot of times your formatting will get lost. So I always advise just text and to have it bold and centered on the page. Okay. And then resume tip number 5 is to make sure that your bullets are specific and data focused, and that as much as possible you're explaining the results of your work. Okay, so this is text that was taken actually from the AmeriCorps Vista website and the MNA website, and this is a really great place to start writing your documents. But you'll notice that these statements read pretty generally, and they're supposed to do that because they are mission statements or vision statements, but they don't explain a whole lot about what you are actually doing in your role. So I suggest that you start here, but that you keep digging and that you drill down to the even more specific pieces of your roles. So how do you get that information? I strongly suggest that you talk to each other as cohort members, talk to your site leaders and or supervisors. Think about your daily and weekly tasks. Are you planning events and workshops? What community partners are you meeting with? How often are you meeting with those people? In those meetings, what are you actually doing? I mean, of course, you're going to a meeting and you're listening to people talk, but what is the goal of the meeting? What is the outcome of the meeting? Okay. And then what skills are you using to do your work as a VISTA volunteer? Okay. What do you help your clients do? Okay. So ways to start explaining your role are to identify the audience and the clients of your service. Where are you doing it? Are you in an urban location, suburban, or rural? The needs of a community in, say, Pewamo, Westphalia, or Sparta, or Baldwin are pretty different from the needs of your clients in, say, Flint or Detroit, right? So you'd want to be very specific about where you're physically working, and to even say in Flint, Michigan, or in Detroit, Michigan. Okay, you want to use data as much as possible to back up your story. And so that's numbers, finances, number of people who attend your meetings, and then again, results. Okay, so here are some more specific examples of how a bullet should read on your resume. So as I mentioned, I was a 5th grade teacher in Goodyear, Arizona. So this is how I would try to explain what I did there. Okay, so I develop, plan, and execute. So notice that the bullet starts with really strong action verbs. And then what do? I execute daily lessons in a classroom of 18 5th grade students from diverse socioeconomic and racial backgrounds. Right, so it's pretty specific. So it has an action verb, then what I am actually doing. So I'm a teacher. And then who am I doing it with and for? Well, I had 18 students and they were in 5th grade. Okay. You meet weekly with 10 clients to discuss job search strategies and target organizations for applications. Okay, so again, the specific pieces there are that it's a weekly meeting, you have 10 clients approximately, and then you're actually discussing how to help them look for a job. Okay. You attend monthly meetings with 8 area agencies to share resources, plan programs, and strategize ways to mobilize the community. The first and only DC charter school focused on sustainability, offering bilingual and experiential education for 550 pre-K 5th grade students. This was actually a bullet taken from one of my clients' resumes, and she was an advocate for charter schools in Washington, DC, and this was an explanation of one of the schools that she worked for. Okay, so some more examples. Again, strong action verbs, specific as much as possible and quantified with numbers. Okay, created access database for 12 office staff to track client meetings. Team used data to reduce duplicative services and serve more people per week. Okay, so this particular bullet talks about what you did, who you did it for, and then what were the results of the action that you took. Recruited 90+ participants through Facebook and word of mouth to participate in annual 5K. Raised $9,000 in donations. Developed, co-wrote, and compiled first school-wide handbook that contained all instructional and operational procedures in one central location. Okay, before we dive into cover letters, I'm wondering if this is a good chance to stop and ask if anyone has any questions.
I do not see any questions.
Okay.
Does anybody have any questions? They can raise their hand and I will ask it for you. Or we can unmute you. Yeah, either way.
Oh,
Chelsea.
Oh.
Chelsea?
Hi, Chelsea.
Where would you suggest putting in the non-competitive eligibility on a resume? So that's one of the benefits that only VISTA members get through their service is this non-competitive eligibility, which means that they can apply for federal jobs essentially already on the inside track.
Mm-hmm.
So where would you suggest putting I have this non-competitive eligibility? I think traditionally it's gone in the cover letter, but sometimes in the system, it's like an automatic reader.
Yep.
So where do you suggest putting that in the actual resume?
Yep. Well, so first, congratulations. That's awesome, especially to get into the federal system at a GS 1, 2, or 3. I don't know what level they'll be at, but
yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely in the cover letter, and then I would also put it probably in your summary statement, so up at the top, and or in the because if in the way that you describe your current role. So one strategy on a resume is to, before you go into the bullets of what you actually do, you can take 1 or 2 lines and just briefly describe the agency or the organization that you work for, and you could put it in that sentence there.
So Chelsea, feel free to comment and describe whether that answered your question or if you have like a follow-up question. I also know that, so VISTAs, you don't have non-competitive eligibility until you complete your term. So while you're applying right now, you want to say, I anticipate having non-competitive eligibility upon completion of my VISTA term in August 2018 or whatever.
Yep.
So that way that term is still showing up, but you're explaining that like, nope, I'm not officially in the system now. Especially because government jobs take a long time to get hired for too. You're going to want to put it on there so that they know that they can still see you as a candidate, a qualified candidate.
Yep. Yeah, government jobs take forever.
Yep.
So just know that going in. It's a very, very long, very clunky bureaucratic process. Yep.
Yes, I have applied for, by the way, this is Mary. I've applied for a job with Social Security Administration, and that was one of the first things that I let them know was my non-competitive eligibility status. It does make it much easier to get in. She was very happy that I will have that in August. So while it does take a long time to get in, according to her, that non-competitive eligibility will cut my time considerably because I will not have to go through the public pool, so to speak. I'm in the running with other federal applicants.
Right.
So while just because it takes a long time, she anticipated a month or 2, and sometimes that seems long, but to me it didn't seem that long. So anyway, just putting that out there for you guys.
If the other thing to know too about timelines is nonprofits and educational institutions, really a lot of companies and organizations have a new fiscal year that starts July 1st. And so positions will continue to post even more rapidly in June and then July and into the summer. So just know that in terms of timing. Great. Any other questions?
Mia commented and said she's only hearing every other sentence
that's
being said, but part of it could be because the phone's over on your end, and so I don't know if she was missing our sentences or not. So I've asked for. Okay, so you're good.
Okay, so she just missed Maggie. So sorry about that. Okay, well, we'll move on to cover letters. And again, yes, you need a cover letter, especially since you will be making what is likely an industry shift from service and volunteer work to a full-time professional job. So again, it's your opportunity to make your pitch to the person reading the letter. You need to address it to a person if possible. That will always get read faster than one that says, to whom it may concern, or dear sir. So you want to address it to the person as much as possible. And your cover letter should be 3 to 4 paragraphs. It should never go over a page. Okay, and in those 3 paragraphs, you want to talk about why you're excited for the job and how your current role connects to it, the accomplishments or specific examples from your current position or prior roles, or perhaps your education. Okay, and that second paragraph can be bullets. It doesn't have to be, but it can be. That is now a socially accepted trend in 2018. And then your third, wrap-up paragraph is how your skills and experience fit their needs, and then how they can reach you. Right, and again, it's 1 page. And cover letters are snowflakes in that each one needs to be unique and needs to read specific to the position that you are applying for. So yes, you can start with a cover letter template. but you need to rewrite and edit pretty significantly for each position that you've applied for. You also want to be careful to make sure that you have changed names, dates, addresses, and roles on cover letters, because you do not want to submit the wrong cover letter to the wrong position, which unfortunately happens a lot. Okay, so this is an example of what an opening paragraph might look like. So you would say the position that you're applying for is an opportunity to combine my passion for social justice and strong advocacy skills in a dynamic nonprofit environment, and I am excited to submit my application for your review. I currently serve as a VISTA volunteer with Michigan Nonprofit Association in Lansing, Michigan, where this is where you would talk about what you do. Okay, and then wrap it up with a direct connect. The coalition building work that I've done with MNA is directly related to this position. Okay, so the cover letter, it really is, you need to spell out for them who you are and why you're applying. Okay, it won't advance. Sorry, technical difficulties again. Okay. Okay. Mine is not. Sorry, my computer is not matching Mary's and Maggie's and Zekiye's. Oh.
Now we're saying good. Oh.
Don't go yet.
Yeah, right. We're still going.
Okay, here we are. Good. Okay, so the middle paragraph is where you're going to talk about your previous role or your current role, any education that you might have that is directly related to the position. And then this is an example of what bullets might look like in that middle paragraph. So you could say highlights from my previous role that are directly related to this position include managing social media posts and writing newsletters, meeting with clients, agency representatives, and policymakers, creating access databases for a wide range of users. Okay, and then in the closing paragraph, you're going to again talk about yourself, how they can contact you, and that you're looking forward to hearing from them. So again, this is your brand, your pitch statement. I am enthusiastic, passionate, and a quick learner. I'm confident that I have the experience and skills needed to contribute positively to the team. I welcome the opportunity to speak with you about my qualifications in more detail, and then you give them your phone number and your email address, and then thank them for their time. All right. So that is the end of my official remarks, but I am absolutely happy to take any questions or comments that you have.
I have a question for you while we wait for.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you notice that you had a typo or something on your cover letter or resume, would you address it and send new information, or would you kind of hope no one sees it?
So the question was, if you notice a typo on your resume or cover letter, would you resend? Yes, I would. If you're submitting to an online electronic application system and it's just going off into like the Ethernet, never world, then no, I wouldn't resubmit, because that will just bog down the system and then they'll actually end up thinking that you're two separate people. But if you have a referral to a position or you've submitted it directly to someone like the HR manager or a recruiter, then yes, I would resend.
But also, you can probably only get away with doing that once.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to get like, oh, found another one.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. The trick to proofreading, so proofreading is actually different than editing. Editing is where you are cutting and pasting, you're moving stuff around for content and flow. Proofreading is where you're actually looking for typos, misspellings, grammar, punctuation issues. And the way to catch those errors actually is to read your document backwards. So to actually start at the end and then to read from right to left. It's very weird, and it's kind of a hard skill to master, but that is how you will catch stuff.
Patricia Sanders says, Grammarly.com.
Yep, Grammarly, but grammar will not catch everything. It will, of course, catch a lot, and it's a good place to start, but you always need to proofread it manually on your own. And also to give it to another person to look at, because they're not attached to what has been written on the page and they're not familiar with it. So they're going to read with objective eyes and they're going to see things that you don't see.
I have a question while we wait for other people too. When people ask for salary requirements to be listed in the cover letter, what do you recommend for doing that? Especially because, as you know, VISTAs earn a stipend, and you don't want that low stipend to be used against them for future earnings.
Correct. Right.
So I know salary history and salary requirements are different.
Right. And on government, if you're applying for government jobs, that's not a question that you cannot answer. On other positions, I actually advise clients to not answer it because everything is negotiable. So I wouldn't actually list your salary requirements or history in a cover letter. Yeah, it just wouldn't, for those reasons. Because if they want you, they want you, and then you can negotiate everything after the offer is made. And salary isn't the only thing, right? You can negotiate time off, telecommuting, working from home, other vacations. There's other benefits that can be negotiated. So yeah, I wouldn't answer it, and I would leave it off.
Thank you.
I'm not seeing any more questions. Does anybody have any last minute questions?
This was really thorough, and I specifically appreciate the trends part of it, because I think, we review resumes for incoming vistas, but that's all done through like a Miracle system, so everything's kind of pre-formatted anyways. Sure. It's helpful to know what else is happening in the world outside of that.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So hopefully the biggest take home is that you want all of your documents to read specifically to you. A lot of times when we start writing, we go to our job description, and that's a good place to start. But a job description is really kind of the bare minimums of what's expected. You want to talk about the difference that you made in the role and then how you did that. So specific is always better than general. So I either covered everything or you're all really overwhelmed, and that's why you have no questions.
Well, I too, just a quick comment, I too really appreciated the trends because I'm in a transition, and in my old resumes, I had the objective statement, and I'm like, what is this? Is this really even relevant? Where do I put certain things? So that was, and I'm finding out exactly what you said. No longer, you already know you want the job.
Right. Yeah, it's not a thing anymore.
I think too, my biggest pet peeve is like writing resumes when you send it out to someone and they're like, oh, it looks great. Like, no, tear it apart because I want a job.
Yeah.
So make sure if you're getting someone to look at your resume, that they're going to give it the time and attention it needs, and don't take it personally.
And specifically for our VISTA members, Mary and Zekiye are happy to help you look at your resume, and I would recommend having your supervisors also look at it, because you might be leaving off like a crucial partnership or something that maybe you're being modest and you don't see it as a huge accomplishment, but it actually was, and that can be really helpful too. And the good thing is, at least in this position, a lot of your supervisors know that it's a one-year commitment and that you'll be either staying for another year or possibly moving on. So this is a really great time to utilize them to get that information.
Absolutely. Yeah, a resume is not the place to be humble. It really isn't. It's a chance for you to brag and to tell your story and to back up your story with data. And especially for us women, and for people who identify as women, we are socialized to not talk about ourselves and to not brag. Humility is, a socially accepted feminine trait, and that is not going to get your foot in the door, and that's not going to get you the offer. So you need to talk about yourself, because it's data that backs up your story.
We did end up with a couple of questions.
Great.
One is from Mia, and she says, how important is resume length? Because that was another question I had too.
Yeah, thanks, Mia.
Mia.
Thanks, Mia. Yeah, that's a great question. So I always tell clients that it doesn't matter how long it is. What matters are two things: what's on it, and that you have full pages. So it's either 1 full, 2 full, 3 full. Probably at this point, you're not to the point where you have enough experience to fill 3 full pages, but 1 for sure. If you go over to the second page, it can't be a page and a quarter, a page and a half. It needs to be a second full page, because if you haven't filled the second page, then it just looks like you were too lazy to condense it to 1 page. Okay? Or that you're padding and that you're putting stuff on there that is more floofy. So 1 full page for sure, and then if you feel that you have enough experience to warrant another page, it has to be a second full page.
Very interesting. Chelsea has a question, and she says, where should we look for good examples of resumes for specific industries?
Great question.
Yeah.
I'm happy to send you some, and I can do that through Maggie, and she can forward them on for you. The other places are Indeed and Glassdoor are some really strong sources. LinkedIn will also likely have some examples. And then truthfully, Google, it really is your friend. You could just do a Google image search, actually. And then the key with industry is you want to match the industry that you're applying for. So for example, if you are putting together a government resume, the government's pretty old school, and so you'd probably have Times New Roman font, a 2-page resume that has 1-inch margins on all sides, kind of pretty standard. Whereas if you were applying to, say, an ad agency in Chicago, you could have some color on your resume. You could have some icons, that are more graphic for, like you could have a graphic of a phone next to your phone number. You could have the LinkedIn logo next to your LinkedIn URL. But the key is to match the industry that you're applying to.
Anything else, guys? Making sure they heard you a little.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything. Okay.
And then please feel free to connect with me. I am on pretty much everything that you're supposed to be on as a small business owner and women entrepreneur. But I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, email. I'm on Pinterest and Twitter. I'm not using those as much. Pinterest is also a place where you could find resume examples. Do an image search. But please feel free to reach out and connect. I'm happy to help. And thank you for your time and good luck.
Thank you
my pleasure.
so much for presenting today. I think it's a lot of really useful information. And I'm sure Mary and I will have a lot of resumes to read now.
Awesome.
So please take advantage of that. We're here to support you all. So if there's anything you ever want us to read over, we're happy to. So
Most definitely.
thanks for joining us. We are going to continue with our presentation. We have a little bit for you on sustainability that we're going to try to work through before 11, because we're supposed to end at 11, and we will stay committed to that. But you all are wrapping up your terms, or most of you are wrapping up your terms, and so making sure that your projects and programs are sustainable is going to be really important, especially as so many of your sites are not returning next year. So for those of you who are the last vista, this is especially important, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that for just the next 15 minutes. Do you want to start?
Sure can.
Okay.
Sustainability, what are you doing to leave your legacy? We've done a lot of good work the past 8-9 months, and we're going to wrap it up here in the next couple months. So what are we doing? Why some programs aren't sustained for organization. Your organization may lack resources. Your organization may lack community support, or lacks organizational support within your organization.
So do you guys have any ideas on how you would address each of these specifically? And by poor organization, I don't mean that your host site is terrible. I mean that the project management isn't there. So what would you do if you feel like, you know, you're on your way out and you're really not sure that your organization has the resources, your organization has the community support, that the people within your organization aren't committed to it? What can you do to kind of offset some of those major failings? And so CNCS reports that 84% of all programs are sustainable. These top 4 reasons why programs aren't sustained are from CNCS and are specific to VISTA programs.
Does anybody want to share?
No? Are none of your programs going to be sustainable? Should I be worried? Oh, no. Okay. Well, you're in luck, because one of the ways you can ensure sustainability is through your legacy binder, which is a requirement for all of you, whether or not you are returning next year, whether or not your host site is returning next year. You will be working on and leaving a legacy binder over the next 3 months if you haven't started working on it already.
Maddie says she can't hear us well and that we're fading in and out. So we will try to do better at speaking up.
Yeah, I think you guys just have to switch the phone back and forth.
Okay. Everybody knows what their legacy binder is, right? Legacy binder part 1, what is it? I hope you all have had good luck working on those. Legacy binders are either physical or electronic, or you can have both, and it's everything you've been working on over the past year. They're designed to ensure knowledge is passed from one VISTA or staff or volunteer for maximum effectiveness. Why recreate the wheel, especially if it's a square wheel that doesn't work? Where are you? Oh, sorry. Were you left a legacy binder, and what has been your experience with them?
Schwarzen asks, how long does your legacy binder have to be? And he says 10 to 15 pages. I'm going to give that old college professor response that it needs to be as long as it needs to be to put your information in there. Sorry, Schwarzen.
Yay, thank you.
That's what you get when you get an academic for a VISTA leader. The one that I was left was less than 10 to 15 pages, but it did not cover nearly the amount of information that I would have liked to see.
We've also had legacy binders that are like 80-plus pages that are done electronically, but it's so thorough because it was at a school and included pictures of people along with information about each person and the relationship with them. So it seems like a lot of work, but really it was copying and pasting images so that way you knew right away, like, oh, that's Mr. Morgan, he teaches third grade and he hates service learning, so I shouldn't talk to him about doing a service project, that sort of thing.
Maddie mentioned, she says, yes, I have used mine throughout the whole year. It had contacts, locations, and information about each volunteer, site, events, or activities. My legacy binder is quite large, but it was very useful.
If you're going to leave it, well, regardless of the size that you leave, I would really encourage all of you to leave a table of contents too. In an electronic version, you can kind of see and navigate a little better and see what folders are named. But in a physical binder, if you don't mark where sections begin and end, a lot of really great information can be lost because it's overwhelming.
And Brianna says, I'm doing a Google Drive for my legacy binder, so I could talk about each event or workshop I've held in detail, including what went great and hiccups I had along the way. I was left with just business cards, so I want to be pretty thorough with mine.
Okay. And Mia says she received one. It was succinct and didn't necessarily convey a good picture of what happened during the year, but gave contact info and data. So listening to other people's responses on how it could be helpful and maybe things that weren't helpful and being left behind, you guys can make even better legacy binders than the last cohort.
Be the legacy binder that you wish to see in the world. That's how you should.
Oh, that's cool.
I made that quote up, Mary.
Right?
Yep.
Legacy binders, part 2, what to include. Program-related info, budget, timeline, what worked well, what didn't, how far did you get, organizational and community impact, how did your work impact your organization? How did your work impact the community? Community culture. What is your community like? What's the host site community relationship? And then recommendations for the future. Don't just cut them off and leave them hanging. How would you do things differently?
There are also a lot of times people say, I don't want to put that information on paper and someone's going to attribute it to me. And then one of my coworkers is really upset because I said something terrible about them. You don't have to say anything terrible. You can say things that are objective, but also if there's information that you want passed and you have a relationship with your supervisor and they're going to be supervising next year, some of that information can be verbally passed down if you don't want your name attributed to it. So you have a terrible coworker and they really don't like service learning, but you don't want to write that down. You can, sorry, I was reading a comment at the same time. Oh, I should never do that. You should be able to hopefully tell your supervisor or maybe a different mentor that you have in your organization who you trust a little better, who might be able to then prepare the VISTA. Chelsea asks, if your host site isn't going to have a VISTA next year, how will these items change? I would still leave a legacy binder, Chelsea, because your supervisor doesn't know everything that you've been working on. They might hire someone on in that VISTA role as a part-time or full-time position, and then whatever is not left in that legacy binder or isn't left behind gets lost because your supervisor doesn't have that information. So you can write it more specifically for staff or for volunteers, depending on what role the person who is taking over your responsibilities has, and how that should be delegated even between staff and volunteers. But being mindful of that will be really important, and a legacy binder should still be left.
Yeah, thanks for your comment, Chelsea. I just want to reiterate what Zekiye said. Good point. It should be sustainable to a staff member or a volunteer. And a good way, that's the only way your legacy binder will change. Still the same information, it just won't be directed at Avista. A good way to make that change is talk with your supervisor. Who do you imagine this part of my position going to, a volunteer or a staff member? That way, maybe if you felt like you wanted to redirect it better, have more specific information, that can give you a little direction to that.
And if it is going to be a volunteer, can you find that volunteer before you leave?
Oh,
so that
good point.
You can also give some of that information, or they can shadow you in what you do, so they get a little bit more hands-on or technical training with, you know, programs or systems that you might use to manage some of your projects. Mia says she's been working on her binder, and she's including an in-depth school profile for every high school in Kent County, which will be helpful for the relationships to the resource development team as well as the incoming staff member. It's helpful that the staff member will be hired prior to the end of this year. Yep, absolutely. So you can kind of see how that that overlap can be really important, and how you can leave that behind for a staff member.
And then all of that should go on your resume.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Seriously, all of this work for the legacy binder is the perfect information that you can literally just cut and paste and put into bullets on your resume.
In the legacy binder I was left, there were flyers and things like that left in there. Put those in your portfolio. You've got graphic design experience or marketing experience or whatever it is. Yep. Chelsea says, I promise I'm making one just so you're not concerned. That's okay. So some other things that you might want to include, office culture. So I remember being onboarded at M&A, and we talked a little bit about professionalism, and Maggie said, I don't care if you come to work with your hair wet, but a lot of organizations don't like that. So having those conversations, and like no one's gonna tell you, but they might judge you for some things, and you can put that in there, like really don't be late to staff meetings, because that is a big no-no. You can add templates, so social media, newsletter templates. We leave behind our weekly update template. I did not create that solely on my own. I know it's fabulous, but I can't take credit. Important contacts, you guys mentioned that already. And then honestly, leave your monthly reports, leave your QPRs, leave your timesheets. A lot of these are questions that people end up having, so they can have reference to that. And then those monthly reports are in detail, everything that you've done, all of your partnerships, how many volunteers, so you can kind of give the Vista coming in a benchmark of how much or how many volunteers you've been able to engage. So I would include those. I know that's kind of scary because you're like, these are my vulnerabilities, but no Vista's going to judge you for doing your monthly reports, because they're going to have to do them next year, and they're going to understand entirely like why you might be worried about leaving those behind. It's also really great because then they get an example of the narrative. I know the narrative is challenging for a lot of people with the wording and whatnot, so that could be very helpful for Vistas who maybe didn't understand during post-PSO. Yep, Shortson, we will email this PowerPoint out. We also will post the recording of it. So it's 11, so we're gonna end, but just a few things. Think about whether you're gonna create a physical or electronic version. Sometimes, you know, the next person coming after you might not be very tech savvy, but physical binders can get lost or damaged. There are other steps you can
taking to ensure sustainability, working on grants, building relationships. It's not just the legacy binder. This is just what one of the things that we would like you to be working on for the next 3 months. And the final metric for whether or not your legacy binder is a good legacy binder is if someone could pick up where you left off by the documentation that's in there. Mia says, thanks for including the job postings on the weekly update. You're welcome. I will look at the website that you posted to for the next week. If you guys come across great jobs that you want to share, sometimes I take them when you post them on Facebook too, when you post them in our Facebook group. So I will include those, or you can just forward me some opportunities. Morgan says, how do you make the negative stuff come across professionally in the legacy binder? For example, a coworker who holds a high position but is difficult but may see the binder at some point. Honestly, Morgan, with your specific position, there have been numerous vistas in that position, so you don't have to put your name on it. You can make it anonymous, or like I said, you can talk to your supervisor and have that handed down in like word of mouth form. If there's any overlap with you because you are an August start, you can actually relay that information because, wait, your site didn't apply again. Never mind. That's not going to work. But if you're going to pass it along to staff or volunteers, you can have those conversations with them, and then there's no documentation for that. But that requires a little bit of overlap and a little bit of planning on your part. So quickly, housekeeping timesheets were due on Monday. If you didn't turn them into us, please do. QPRs are due May 11th. You have to look over them with your supervisor before putting them into CVent. Signature service projects are May 18th and 19th. Registration is closed, but if you're serving or if you're not serving, please shoot us an email. We only see the registration for Mid-Michigan, so it's helpful to know and to see how it's represented. I learned a lot of great stuff about other AmeriCorps programs last year and was really grateful at the end of the day to be in our program and to not have hourly requirements. And then the June webinar has been rescheduled to June 13th. So that's going to wrap everything up. If you have questions, let us know. Otherwise, the recording will be up, and I'll post something on Facebook and email everyone when that's been done. Cool. Thanks, guys. Bye. Have a good Wednesday.